This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 463 of the Craft Beer Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner, and for today's episode, I am in Omaha, Nebraska. You know, I teased this one last year during our Best in Beer episodes. Like, you know, what is going on out here in Nebraska? An interesting concentration of high-performance breweries, one that lots of folks and readers and listeners to Craft Beer Brewing are familiar with, cross-strain, 3 times in our Best in Beer. But I was also noticing as I was looking through, over the last year and the year before, phenomenally interesting concentration of hazy IPA metals. 3 different breweries, in fact, out here in Omaha, between Omaha and Lincoln, who are all winning medals in this general category over the last 7 or 8 years, including cross-strain. But anyway, my guest on today's episode is Dan Brouillette of Lumen. Welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for making the drive out. It's been this is a fun thing for me, so I appreciate it.
You're a longtime podcast listener, and here we are.
I am, yeah. And as you saw in the back, longtime reader as well.
Giant stack of old issues of Craft Beer and Brewing magazine. It warms my heart. I get so excited when I see that. The other thing I get excited when I see are the World Beer Cup plaques that you've got up here. You won 2 World Beer Cup medals last year in hazy juicy pale ale, hazy juicy strong pale ale, both for Wisp, which is your hazy juicy pale ale, and Slice, the IPA or hazy IPA version of that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Nope, you're right on. Yeah, one's a 5.2% beer, one's a 6.4. That's pretty much the difference.
2 silver medals at World Beer Cup, and of course the year before at GABF, Slice won a bronze medal in that same juicy hazy pale ale category. So that beer Slice, or I guess Wisp is one that in GABF. So now you've got both World Beer Cup and GABF medals for Wisp. I will note Wisp scored a 97 with our judges in Craft Beer and Brewing. Slice scored a 98 with the blind judges in Craft Beer and Brewing. And I always love it when I see these like awesomely high scores align with these medals, because we're not generally aware of that when that happens. Anyway, that's one of the reasons we're here. We're going to talk about brewing hazy and juicy pale ale. And Dan, you get pretty nerdy about it.
I do, yeah. We're definitely in the center of the country, so we're a little late to the party a lot of the time. But we make up for it by going all out, and that's definitely what we are with hazy IPA. We still have people coming in buying full flats to ship to both coasts or across the world or wherever the beer's going. I don't care, but it's definitely our focus. We do our fair share of the barrel-aged stuff and lagers and West Coast IPA, but I'd say 2/3 of the beer we brew on a given year is hazy IPA.
All right. I love to talk to brewers who are actually passionate about hazy IPA and don't just make hazy IPA because consumers want hazy IPA. And so we're not going to miss this opportunity to dive deep into it. And, and Dan is just as insane as you might think for someone here in terms of data tracking and making sure that the hops that he gets every year, the hops that he's using in the beer, are the absolute best and that fit those kinds of flavor profiles. And so has built some pretty in-depth flavor and lot tracking, sensory tracking tools for himself in order to make sure that what he's getting every year kind of matches up to that. And is actually, as we were talking before we started here, found more value in that than in selection. And I think that there's an interesting story there to say that it is not just about going out for selection in person, but using that kind of data to your advantage can be make or break for a small brewery. We're going to dive into all of the details around that. But before we do...
Hey brewers, Justin here from G&E Chillers. We're all about solving problems in the brew house, staying ahead of the curve and building chillers that work as hard as you do.
G&E's new Elite 290 Micro Series runs on a natural refrigerant with near zero global warming potential, built for brewers who care about sustainability and performance. They recently built one for New Belgium Brewing, delivering around 50% energy savings over CO2 systems and 9% more efficient than A2Ls. That's real world impact from a brewery that knows what it takes. With 24/7 support and remote monitoring, your cold side stays dialed in day or night. Learn more about sustainable chiller solutions at gdchillers.com/podcast. And Berkeley Yeast just launched Dry Tropics London, their best-selling liquid yeast strain, now with all the ease-of-use benefits of dry yeast. Dry Tropics London delivers the soft, pillowy mouthfeel and juicy character you'd expect from a top-tier London ale strain, but with a serious upgrade, a burst of thiols that unleash vibrant, layered notes of grapefruit and passion fruit. A lot of brewers love the clean passion fruit you get from Tropics, but they don't want every IPA to be a tropical fruit bomb. At the dry yeast price point, you can pitch and ditch without breaking the bank, or you can co-pitch with your house strain to adjust the intensity of the notes. And with nationwide free shipping, there's never been a better time to try Dry Tropics. Order now at berkeleyyeast.com and experience the ease and impact of Dry Tropics London yeast. And this episode is sponsored by PackTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PackTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PackTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, including this one right here, who just finished up a canning run with some PackTechs. They offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit packtech-opi.com. That's PAKTECH-OPI.com. You also have a G&D chiller here. You've hit two of, and you use some Berkeley yeast, don't you?
We use Berkeley yeast this week. We have a G&D chiller on the roof, and we just went through about 1,500 PackTechs. So,
well, there you go.
Checking all the boxes.
You hit all the notes right here. All right, Dan, we normally start off with a little bit of background. Why don't you tell us yours? You were a professional photographer for a while in your career, and yet you got the brewing bug, and here we are.
Yep. So I worked, graduated from Iowa State University 2006, caught the photo bug when I was there, graduated with a degree in psychology, was sick of school. The only way to go anywhere with a psychology degree is to keep going to school. I wasn't going to do that. So thought, all right, let me pursue this photo thing. Visited some friends in New York City after doing the photo stuff for about 2 years. Realized that's where dreams are made or broken. And moved out there in about 2009. And at the same time, drinking a lot of beer. At that time, I was a big wheat beer drinker.
All right.
Just when I was living in Iowa, small town Iowa, before moving, I was just drinking Boulevard wheat, one after the other. And had never had a hoppy beer, never big on, American craft lager or a macro lager or any of that type of stuff. Moved to New York, dabbled in drinking every German style you could find because there's a lot more of it on tap out there.
Sure.
And was introduced to a few, on work trips, very top-notch hoppy beers. One was a trip to San Francisco, got to sip on some Pliny, not a bad start. And it was all downhill from there. No, but kind of. And then a little brewery in Iowa opened called Toppling Goliath. So when I was home, we'd get fresh Pseudo Sue, and this is 12 years ago, and then also some other trips drinking things like Zombie Dust, and just this full introduction to those beers, and then also finding the occasional bootleg Heady Topper cans at New York bars. So that was all around, 2010, 11, 12. And that's kind of where the love of and chasing beer started as far as from a drinking standpoint.
And so you started homebrewing then on the side.
Yep. I was living in New York in Thanksgiving time, 2011, flew back home to visit my parents in Iowa. And one of our family friends had talked to my mom, and she said, I know that Dan and his brother Eric love drinking beer, but do they want to see how it's made? I'm a home brewer, and I'm going to make a batch on Black Friday of a Schwarz beer. I didn't even know what a Schwarz beer was, but I thought, all right, sounds like a good time. So that was one of our family friends named Marty. We went out to Marty's garage, brewed on his Blickman system for the first time, and this is, again, 2011, and drank way too many beers. And afterwards, me and my brother looked at each other and thought, man, that was a lot of fun. So Googled, brewing equipment, ended up on Northern Brewers website, ordered the full kit, a couple of extract batches of Founder's Breakfast Stout and a Pliny clone, and had them shipped to my parents' house. I went back to New York. In the meantime, all the stuff arrived, came back for Christmas. We brewed both beers, and that was it. We were hooked.
Man, so you were a beer nerd and home brewer, and homebrewing then, I imagine, it went back to New York City with you, but then you come back to this part of the world.
Yep, around 2012, 13-ish. I had spent well over 100% of the money I had made in New York, which wasn't much, on good times and no regrets. And it was time.
Hey, being young and broke in New York City was awesome for me. I imagine it was awesome for you. Then we had kids and like, yeah, I don't know. Being broke with kids in New York City really is not awesome. And, and so anyway, there was the next phase to that life.
Exactly. Yep.
Being old and rich in New York City is also awesome. Haven't experienced that yet, but
same.
We'll see. We'll see.
Not sure I will, but young and broke was definite. That was experience and it was great. Yeah. But the real world came calling. So I had met a lot of contacts in the photo world. Thought, you know what, my lease is up. By the way, we were living in sort of a bootlegger's apartment. It was one of those Brooklyn, Bushwick warehouses where your building owner said, if the fire marshal's outside, don't open the door, and you're paying a guy cash. And I had to drywall my own bedroom when I moved in. So one of those type of places, but
your old apartment is now renting for $4,000 a month.
And I was paying $850.
Yeah.
So yes,
that neighborhood is crazy now. I was just in Bushwick last year. Just insane to see it.
Yep, it is. So
great breweries over there now.
There are, and there was a lack of them.
Eckhart,
a lack of them then for sure. It was just sipping on 6 Point resin and some other East Coast beers. But anyways, I moved back to Iowa and got more into the home brewing. Found home in Omaha because I was kind of sick of living in small town Iowa. It's like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this photo thing here, I need to have actual clients and an airport that has convenient flights to go elsewhere for these jobs, and moved to Omaha, eventually got a house, and then really upgraded the home brewing equipment. So that's kind of where it all went. And this was all inspired by another trip out to New York afterwards, probably around 2014 or 15. I don't remember off the top of my head. It was summer, and some guys were telling me, hey, we know you like beer, but this new brewery opened down by Gowanus, and it's called Other Half. You should check it out. So maybe a few of you are familiar with it, but I hopped on the train.
Never heard of them.
Yeah. Small little joint. Hopped on the train, walked down to the 8 million stairs you do when you get there, past the McDonald's, and went into the smallest tap room I've ever been in. Had one 4-sided picnic table, few taps, and a chalk beer list, and it was the absolute best. And I can still remember it exactly just because it inspired so many things when I was going home to homebrew. And it was like, that was sort of what changed things as far as like, all right, there's something to this. And the vibe was just, maybe it was high ABV beers too, but that combination just kind of started my brain working into, there's nothing like this where I live. How do you make it happen?
Yeah, that the flavor that they were finding in this kind of hazy IPA canvas, it's truly extraordinary, but also felt so fresh and so new. And yet they also had this kind of New York aesthetic, and it was cool without trying to be cool. Just because you can't try too hard on that. It just has to like feel worn and natural and cool. And that old tiny little tap room, which I did a podcast with Sam in there many, many years ago. It was just such a awesome little felt like you were discovering this place in the middle in this strange little neighborhood in New York. Anyways, you caught this hazy IPA bug, and that really set you off.
It did, yeah. So came back home, started at that point all grain brewing in my basement, just on some combination of Grainfather and SS Brewtech equipment. Started just brewing hazy after hazy, trying to figure out, this is the time where people online are like, I think hazy IPAs, they're just pouring flour in them, or all these number of things.
It's pectin. It's just like,
right? It's just totally misunderstood.
Right.
But at the same time, it was a mystery because no one knew exactly what was happening. So that's all I brewed. I brewed hazy after hazy after hazy. And I would take a few glasses, and the rest of it, I was kegging everything. It was like, someone's having a party. Here's a beer. Someone's having a wedding. Here's a beer. Just to keep my reps up, but not just dumping the beer. And eventually Probably about 2018 or 19, a few friends. My brother had gotten married. I made beer for his wedding, and people were like, if you ever want to pursue this as something bigger, let us know, because we really like your beer and your ideas. And at that point, I was like, I don't know. Like, the photo thing was going well. Life just gets in the way, and I just kept homebrewing. And then a little thing called COVID took over, and all my photo, in 2019, I took 48 round trip flights for photo shoots. And in 2020, I had one in January to Sundance Film Festival, and then none the rest of the year. So there was a lot of extra time, a lot of home brewing. And one day I was down visiting a coffee shop that's about 4 doors from where we're sitting right now. And someone was putting a for rent sign in the window. And I thought, well, it was on my short list of neighborhoods that if I ever opened a brewery, it would be in this neighborhood. So I took a picture of the sign, called the number, and the guy said, come back tomorrow and I'll give you a tour. And that was kind of that. Took the tour, presented it to my brother and a few friends who said they would like to be involved, and had a little meeting, and there we go.
And little did they know what they were getting into at that point.
Yeah, and myself too.
Yeah, sure. Start a brewery, they say. It'll be great, they say.
Yeah, be the general contractor with no construction experience, they say. It'll save you money. Well, not so much.
Here in Nebraska, people know how to do these things here.
You figure it out.
You roll up the sleeves, you get things done.
Yeah, you get 7 bids when you need 3, because the first 3 bids tell you the jargon that you need to know to talk to the next 3. So that was literally how it went.
Well, we know the creative brief that you had set out for yourself was, contemporary, progressive beer styles focused on hazy IPA. And, here in Omaha, like, there is a pretty awesome kind of aesthetic class. I shouldn't even call it aesthetic, but the indie scene is strong, is great musicians. This is the whole Bright Eyes, Desert Pedacitos, Connor Oberst kind of creative thing. There's an interesting kind of, there is an audience for what you do on that. It might be a smaller audience, but it is an audience. And like everything, being meaningful and connecting directly in a deep way with a passionate audience is so much more valuable than just trying to be everything for everyone, and in that sense. And so creating this thing that felt like people's place is a very cool thing for you. I want to talk about what that translated to in terms of beers. Before we do that, the multi-layered wonders of indie hops Strata are now easier than ever for brewers to tap into. Introducing Strata Cryo in collaboration with Yakima Chief Hops. Whether brewing up a single hop Strata IPA to wow customers with the depth of flavor this variety delivers, or modernizing your flagship IPA to continue setting the highest standards, Strata T90, Strata CGX, Strata Hyper Boost, and now Strata Cryo provide the tools for brewers to create their unique masterpiece. Indie Hop Strata, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And if you're like many podcast listeners, you've got a lot of beers at home and your regular fridge is at capacity, enter the Midea 50/50 Flex, the industry's first dual compartment 3-way convertible freezer. Here's what all that means for you. Options. The 50/50 has the power to be all freezer, all fridge, or a little bit of both, but you'll probably want to use those 20 cubic feet as a massive garage-ready beer fridge. You can also change which side the door is on or how you want the shelves to be arranged. The 50/50 totally flexes to fit your life. Plus, it's designed to maintain a stable temperature even in non-climate controlled conditions, so you can crack a cold one even on the warmest days in the man cave. Take your garage to the next level. Check out midea.com/US to get more info about this game changer today. Also, the Beyond Beer space is booming, and Old Orchard is here for it, supplying breweries with fruit ingredients for all your beverage needs. Low, no alcohol, hard lemonades, seltzer, cider, and more. Old Orchard has supplied hundreds of industrial customers across 49 states, including nationally and internationally loved brands, so you'll be in good company. More information and free samples are waiting at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. So you set this creative brief out for yourself, Dan. You're going to plant your flag on hazy IPA, but as you know, as a home brewer, making really great hazy IPA is, that matches the level of these that you're inspired by is not nearly as easy as, I don't think it even seems easy. It feels hard. And then when you do it, it's even harder.
Yeah, but between that combination of a lack of control with temperature, for the most, the equipment's getting better all the time. I haven't looked at it in a while, but even near the end of my home brewing with companies like SS Brewtech and all these other ones that were introducing glycol chillers for, your basement and these type of things, that control is coming to be more prevalent within the home brewing. But there's other things you can't go buy Hyperboost from YCH on a homebrew level because you would need like 2 drops of it. So, there's just things like that that don't exist that commercial brewers are privy to. So it is tough. And at that time, it's like figuring out which yeast strain and these type of things. So I was brewing with a lot of 1318 and just any of those London strains, trying to put this puzzle together. And obviously got it to a point where I felt comfortable enough to make the next step. The other thing was I never worked at a brewery. So, going to open a brewery, you don't know what you don't know. One of the things I did once deciding to open the brewery was I emailed many breweries who I really respected, both from a beer standpoint, a vibe standpoint, or just technique. And it was saying, if you were to open again, I'm going to open a brewery. If you were to open again, knowing what you know now, what 10 tips would you give? And everybody I emailed me back within it. I was shocked. Some of them were, 10 paragraph long emails of sloped floors, which, by the way, I don't have. You just walk through a puddle in the back because our building's 120 years old. But all these things that I could just go through my checklist and be like, all right, I don't even know what this is, but I need to figure it out because we're in the construction phase of renovating a 120-year-old building into a brewery, but I've never worked at a brewery. So just figuring all that stuff out. And then that was before ever even making a beer commercially, because the first beer we ever made, or I ever made on a commercial system, was here. So it's just, again, you don't know what you don't know, but at the same time, the passion was there, creativity was there, and the I'm going to do this attitude was definitely there. And I always tell people the brewery was kind of built on return flight daydreams. So it was all these trips around, and I always carve out time to visit local breweries wherever I went. And then that flight back was always taking little nuggets from each of those places and just storing them in my head someplace for knowing that if this ever happens, there's going to be these little odes to those experiences that pop up within whatever I eventually do. And here we are.
Sure. What are your 10 tips to someone who's thinking about or planning on starting a brewery?
Well, slope floors are definitely one of them.
Do as I say, not as I did.
Yeah, exactly.
You learn the wisdom. You see why they recommended it.
Yeah, totally. And I think, having a manageable size. So whether you want to be I feel like there's 2 sizes of breweries in 2026 that work. Either really small ones like us. For context, we have a 5-barrel brew house with the oversized mash tun, and we have 8 tanks, a mixture of 5s and 10s. We put out 500 barrels a year, thereabout, and almost all of it is sold out of the tap room. One of the things we did early on that absolutely saved us just from a sales standpoint was bought a canning line. There's all these smaller canning lines now. And within the first year, it was on my 5-year plan. Oh yeah, buy a canning line. But that first year we were making crowlers of everything, and it was miserable. Quality, they last 2 seconds. Some of your bar staff isn't so great at filling them and making sure the quality's there. So buying that canning line, all of a sudden our sales just absolutely skyrocketed. So it was finding something that was manageable. When you got here today, you saw us running the canning line. We did 70 some cases of cans today, and I ran all of them through myself. Dominic here labeled all of them on the back end, and you can do that. That was something I definitely recommend. But then also it
was a semi-manual process, but the canner is good. It's 3-head canner, and so your throughput worked, and with 2 people managing it with a manual labeler, putting each can on the little roller, it's you were still able to do that with 2 people.
It's definitely a thing. And then from other tips of someone trying to open, it's just also we're in a day and age where there's so many breweries that you have to be really good at whatever style you choose. And I have other friends or homebrew customers who bring in beer, and they're like, oh, I really want to open a brewery. And I'm not going to discourage anyone because that's not kind of how I am. It's always, you can do whatever you want to do, but you just got to make sure you're good at what you do and not be delusional. So, find the right people to give you the feedback that you need to be successful, but then also make sure whatever, like I said, there's 10,000 some odd breweries right now in the United States. So the customer's palate is very refined because there's so many options. So if you're going to do it, you better do something that stands out and stands up to that quality, because we're at that point where I get an email every week from, there's a brew bid auction this week because this place is closing or that place. And that's, that's sad because someone's dream is dying, but at the same time, that's just the reality of business. So you have to deal with it. So I think if you're going to go for it, just make sure what you're making stands out and that it stands you apart from a quality standpoint.
Yeah, and I think that again, whatever mode you choose depends on where you are and what those circumstances are. If you are in an urban environment where there's a competitive brewery, there's other choices of breweries, then what we are seeing more often in this kind of challenging brewery environment is the breweries that aren't people's first or second choice are getting hit the hardest.
Yeah,
and
totally.
So how do you become that first or second choice? If you're the only brewery in town, it's a different mode for you, right? Until there's another one, you do need to serve everybody. And yet then you get into a competitive city like Denver, where there's 75 breweries in the city of Denver. Like, how do you become meaningful and matter and get people to continue to come out to you over and over again? Rather than just bouncing around and trying a bunch of different things. And so you've done that again by focusing deeply on this style of hazy IPA with this goal of, and not just a goal of making award-winning, medal-winning, noteworthy, moving the needle at a national and international level versions of these beers. So why don't we go through, from you start commercially brewing. Talk to me about how you dialed in your approach to hazy IPA, what you discovered now in this commercial world, what that allowed you to do with brewing this vision that you had for hazy IPA that was going to reflect Lumen.
Yeah, I think one of the main things is trying to, it's sort of a checklist of the first is the visual appeal. So how do you make a beer that looks the way you want it to look? A hazy IPA, pale color. Some of the ones we make.
First, in terms of time and the way that somebody has experienced it. Not first in terms of the most important. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going. If someone pours you a glass of beer, the first thing you're doing, you see it.
I can just see a brewer out there. That's not the most important thing. Is not how it looks. No, we're not talking about that.
It's definitely not, and that actually happens where we have beers where things happen and it might look slightly different. We've learned that certain hops make a hazy IPA look different. Like if you're dry hopping a beer heavily with Mosaic, it's not going to look the same as if you're dry hopping a beer fully with New Zealand hops. And those are things where the visual people get stuck on, but the flavor is fantastic. So there is getting past that. And then aroma. Like,
what do you mean by what is that kind of visual difference with in terms of hops that you use?
From our experience, if you were to do 100% Mosaic dry hopped hazy IPA, it would have a very light haze. So, it's not that milky, creamy, light golden, pale yellow look. It's a beer that's probably slightly darker in color. You can almost see through it if you really, if you held a flashlight up to it. But the aroma is fantastic and Mosaic's a great hop, but people just get stuck on these things, whether it's Untapped or Instagram. You have the haze chasers and the haze boys and all these people that get stuck on those things, and right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's just selling beer and making beer.
If it's not milky and the palest that it can possibly be, then it's certainly not worth hype chasing. Yeah,
and the beer we can today checks all those boxes with 10% triple IPA collab that you couldn't see through it with a 1,000 lumen flashlight. So it's thick. But
I see what you did there.
I didn't even mean to. That was that just happened because that's what our flashlight is. So going for that, you have your visual, you have your aroma, and it's sort of like a GABF checklist too of what the judges go through when you get those notes, which we can talk about that as well. But then obviously after that, it's all about the flavor. So whether it's the actual body and mouthfeel of the beer, to the bitterness, to the, final gravity or residual sweetness and those type of things, and then the finish with stringency or lack thereof, it's building recipes that check different boxes for different people. And the beers we're brewing our World Beer Cup beers right now, and those will be much different than a beer that I want to make on Top Drops on Instagram. They're just a different audience. And the thing is about it, we don't brew one type of hazy IPA. This is not the Lumen hazy IPA. We brew different, depending on our mood or what we're going for. There's these different segments within hazy IPA, and it's not just ABV, there's that too, but just different segments and different styles with sub-styles within the style. And we brew all those, and we can get into that because I have a whole stack of recipe sheets. And, while the general idea is the same, the sub ideas are very different.
Dan, you have just set me up for a topic that I have wanted to talk about so much. And so I'm not going to let this one go. We are going to get into, wait a second, sub-styles of hazy IPA? Wait, you're talking about there's a difference between what the dudes on Untappd are checking in with 4.6s versus what World Beer Cup judges are giving gold medals? Crazy that all of this kind of breadth could exist out there, and that you as a brewery could maybe not just approach it as a singular kind of thing with only one style, but have different things that fit different people. You've got a hazy IPA for that guy that wants to come in here and drink 2 or 3 after a hard day of work. And you've got a hazy IPA that someone's going to want to come in and drink a 4-ounce taster of, 4 of them, in order to check them all in on Untappd and impress their friends, because all of those things can exist. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, I want to dig into what these kind of sub-styles are and some of these kind of schools of hazy IPA that, as you guys think about them. Before we do that, pumps are critical to any brewing setup, from home brewing through nano brewing, and of course at the pro level, from mash recirculation to wort transfer, and even for cleaning. A quality pump is a key part of every brew day. The SS Brew Pump from SS Brewtech is engineered to tackle even the messiest brew days and do it at a scale home brewers can afford. Featuring an IP-55 water resistance rating, an easy-to-use DIN head with 360-degree rotation, and a flow rate of up to 11 gallons per minute, it has the power to keep your brew day moving. Visit www.ssbrewtech.com/pump to learn more about how the SS Brew Pump can upgrade your home brewery. And tickets are on sale now for the annual Craft Beer and Brewing Brewers Retreat, August 23rd through 26th in Hop Country, Yakima Valley, Washington. There is nothing like this fantasy homebrew camp experience as you brew in small groups led by some of the most inspiring breweries in the world. Folks like Vinny and Natalie of Russian River, Ben from Breakside, Henry and Adriana of Monkish, Kelsey from North Park, Whitney from Grand Fir, Sean from Lawson's Finest, and more. This year we'll be brewing under the bines at Bale Breaker. It's sure to be an unforgettable experience. Come brew with me. Come brew with all of us. Tickets are on sale now, going fast at brewersretreat.com. All right, Dan, we've got to talk about this, because I love this idea that there's not just one model of hazy IPA for you. In fact, for you, there's like a lot of different models. There are more sessionable approaches. There are kind of like cleaner and tighter hop expressions in hazy IPA that are definitely geared towards just a general craft drinker. Maybe some kind of American hops that aren't necessarily quite as like fruit forward. And then there is just these saturated, just monstrously big and thick, kinds of beers that are going to get out there in the trading world. But let me not put words into your mouth. When you think about some of the like lanes and tiers and sub styles of hazy IPA, how do they line up in your mind?
Yeah, they sort of break down 2 different ways. The more obvious one is ABV. So you have your sessions, and I feel like we're to that time now where there's a large audience. There's a lot of people who just don't drink anymore and pursue other ways to get there, if you will. But at the same,
I don't know what you're talking about there.
I don't know. We're in Nebraska. We better not talk about it. They might bust in the door.
I'm in Colorado. I don't know. I don't know if I find that the whole cannabis versus beer thing is a giant thing. I think people are, in a general health and wellness standpoint, like me, I'm getting older. I don't drink as much as I did 10 years ago. I'm over 50 now, and I still love beer. I just, it's just not drinking the same kind of quantity that I once did.
Yeah, and that's probably a good choice and also fair and popular. So you don't have to have this sacrifice of flavor when it comes to a lower ABV beer, because if you do it right, you can pack all that flavor in there. And one of the things we learned from GABF and World Beer Cup from the notes, and a lot of people, they say take the notes with a grain of salt, but what we do is look for through lines, and it's like, all right, there might be one judge says this and the next judge note says the exact opposite. All right, we're going to disregard that. But if you get multiple, that's why we also enter 6 to 7 beers of almost the same style. So for World Beer Cup, by the way, I didn't know this when I started. It just happened. We make hoppy beer. So we entered 6 beers into GABF last year. By entering 6 beers of similar style, the notes come back similar. And we realized that we were letting our beer sit on yeast too long. So it was like, oh, these notes, like these terms that they're giving us on the notes all come back to that. So we totally changed how we were doing our fermentation and when we were lowering, dropping yeast and all that. Started doing that. Everything changed as far as those notes going away. And then fast forward a year for World Beer Cup, the notes are totally different. We win 2 medals, and there's a different set of notes, but they're more based around astringency. So it's like, well, astringency is, more of a polyphenolic character that we're getting from the dry hop. How do we change that? And that's where these smaller beers started to come about, because astringency is very prevalent in a 3.2% beer if you're not careful when you're dry hopping at over 4 pounds per barrel. And a lot of that comes from time and temperature. So with the subsect we're talking about now of hazy IPA, we're talking about sessionable hazies that are packed with flavor. And one of the things we package on Thursdays, and we also package on Mondays. So we used to dry hop on like a Friday or Saturday. We were dry hopping warm with just jackets off, 70 degrees, then rousing the tank, coming in Sunday, rousing the tank again. So a Saturday afternoon dry hop, rouse, Sunday rouse, and then crash the tank. And then leaving the beer on those hops cold until Thursday morning packaging. And I thought, man, we're getting these notes, like I can taste it, but I don't mind the green flavor.
Sure.
But if you're trying to win a medal and you have green in your beer, you're not getting very far. So it was, doing a little research, reading up, listening to more podcasts, and finding out like, all right, this astringency is coming from a off balance of polyphenolic issues that are coming from the beer sitting on hops too long and also maybe too warm. So then we started dry hopping beers on Friday, but packaging Monday. And we're dry hopping a little bit colder, only letting them sit on the hops. And we do unitanks, so we're not moving things to bright tanks. Like it gets dry hopped on a Friday afternoon. We're rousing that beer once with CO2 for about a minute at 30 PSI through the racking arm. And then Saturday, I'm coming in, putting about 12 PSI of head pressure on that beer and crashing it halfway down. Then coming in again, crashing it the rest of the way to 38 degrees. We don't crash too cold because I don't want everything to fall out. And then carbonating on a Sunday, packaging on Monday morning. So it was like taking multiple days, like 2-3 days off of the contact time on the lower ABV beers. And all of a sudden, the beers we were canning on Monday, we could drink Monday afternoon. It was like, oh, wow, there is none of that astringency. It's all gone, and it's just all hop forward, like clean beer. And that's what we started doing with the lower ABV stuff. So that was a game changer as far as the strategy.
Still holds on then all the way, because time, when we were talking about hazy IPA in particular, is such a factor. And, especially with hoppy beer and competition judging, you're not always thinking about the beer that you can drink the day that you're done canning it. You're thinking about the beer that a judge is going to drink 4 to 6 weeks after that point. If you're lucky, and and you like figuring out how to get it to peak then, in that kind of judging time frame, is also a challenge.
Yeah, and I think That's totally spot on. And I think one of the things is, for some reason, a lot of that astringency doesn't seem to leave. If those hops are trapped in the can, they might even be giving off more of that polyphenolic burn. Not to mention, depending on how they pour it, they ask you, do you want us to rouse the can or pour it still quiet? But there's only so much of that that's under control. And we found that just getting less of that into the cans is one thing, but also just having less contact time on that giant dry hop load is important. And then also doing it slightly colder. So rather than do it at 70 degrees, we're doing that at 64. It also helps with the yeast harvest, but that's another story. And we're not finding that the peak of when they judge it, let's say they judge it 30 days later, is part of the issue. It's more like that's more of an oxygenation packaging contest, as a lot of people say.
Sure.
So it's controlling that aspect of it. So we do submit all of our cans for competition off of our canning line, but I totally reset the canning line to different purge times, and we're watching, fill head 1 might be the one we go with, and those type of things. But as far as a low ABV sessionable beer, that's kind of the strategy, and then we can get into the malt bill and all that stuff as well.
I'm curious about that. Like, you're dropping 4 pounds per barrel into a 3 point something percent hazy IPA. Like, that feels like that could get out of whack and out of balance really fast. Although, as you now mention it, I think there is something to this idea of colder, shorter contact that lets you drive more intensity in the desirable hop flavors that you want without picking up some of the same kind of intensity out of some of the less desirable hop characters that you don't want in there. So there is something to that where I think, keeping that balance in the right place and like turning up the volume just on the right notes that you want, without picking up some of that background noise that's going to be distracting can be pretty important there. But in general, it's also easy in this kind of beer, if it doesn't have a full mouthfeel, to feel like, and also, some residual sweetness, but not too much, because you're also still talking about beers that are going to be judged by other brewers. And, those beers can't be sweet just to build some idea body. So how do you build heft in these small beers that can support that kind of intense hop flavor? Yeah.
So I'm looking at a brew sheet right now for Puff, our 3.2% hazy. People seem to love it. We love it here. And that beer is only 40% base malt. So on a 5-barrel batch, it's 2 bags of Gambrinus Pils, 2 bags of flaked oats, and a half a bag of chit. And that's it. So it's 40% base malt. And people are like, how are you running that beer off? And we do use bioglucanase or glucobuster or any of those products. We don't use rice hulls, only in stouts. We've only had issues with rice hulls, so we've kind of avoided that, and we can talk about
issues with rice hulls.
Well, it's just it's not necessarily that we found that they don't give us anything, so we just avoid using it. We can get into kind of how we use Simpson's malted oats that have the hull still intact on the bigger beers.
Oh yeah,
that's not in this particular beer.
Sure.
But like I said, 40% base malt, 40% flaked oats, and about a 10% chit. So that's the grist bill on our 3.2% hazy. The other thing is we're 100% RO. Omaha water is not conducive for brewing. So we're looking for around 180 ppm of chloride. We build that up through calcium chloride and then just straight pickling or table salt, NaCl. And then our sodium levels are around 40. Calcium's around 60, and then our sulfates are 0 on that beer. We're putting 0 gypsum. So it is straight NaCl and calcium chloride, and that's it. We do target a 5.2 pH on every beer, no matter what, and we're hitting that through a combination of those salts and then phosphoric acid.
And that's a mash pH.
A mash pH, yep. So we're using 75%, whatever they sell on BSG of phosphoric acid, and that's going in the mash. We're not adding any salts whatsoever to the sparge, the kettle. It's all going in the mash. And then we're shooting for a first runnings pH of 5.2.
And the glucanase enzyme is the thing that makes this crazy mash work for you.
Since we started using that, knock on wood, we've had zero issues. Like all runoffs we run everything off at about 2.5 gallons per minute from the lauter tun or from the kettle, mash tun to the kettle, and it keeps everything smooth. So near the end of our mash, we'll throw in about 60 milliliters of glucobuster and let it, for the last 15 minutes of the mash, stir in and mix in. And the other thing is our mash temp is really high. It's 158 degrees on that 3.2% beer. So our strike water is around 170. So we're mashing at 155, obviously a high protein grist. We do a 90-minute boil on every beer we brew here, no matter what. Yeah. Every single beer is 90 minutes. High calcium chloride.
Just to increase your energy costs?
Yeah, because we have an electric brew kettle, so I love paying OPPD even more money than necessary, especially with no insulation in this old building. I love spending all that money to them. It's great.
But no, why 90?
For one, a lot of our other beers are 100% Pilsner malt.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit, there's those off flavors that come about with the shorter boils, and I'm sensitive to that. We have a lot of customers and friends who are too. So it was like, you know what? We're not in a hurry. Let's just get it there, 90 minutes. Plus, it makes our post-boil volumes pretty predictable with boil off and all that. So we always know what we're dealing with. Oftentimes with these lower ABV beers, we do end up adding RO back into the whirlpool just to top it off a little bit because they are more efficient despite the heavy amount of oats. And we haven't, I'm looking right now, our mash efficiency on one of those beers is 71%. So it's not great, but it's not terrible.
On a 5-barrel batch that's sold out of your tap room, you can manage that.
You can manage it. Yeah. It's not a big deal. So that's kind of our approach for those smaller beers. The other thing I want to hit on is almost every beer we make, no matter the ABV, this is part necessity and part just how it works out, is we use 3 pounds in the whirlpool. So we can get into whirlpool hops and all that later, but we're not big on whirlpool hops. There's other things we add like Dynaboost and Hyperboost and those type of things. But based on clogging a heat exchange and other things, we are, some of it might be cryo or T90, but we're a 3 pound whirlpool type of brewery. And that's just kind of where we sit.
3 pounds total or
3 pounds total.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. On a 5-barrel batch.
Right.
Yep. And, like I said, we can get into that whirlpool temperature.
Let's talk about that since we're already there. Why are while the rest of the brewing world is like pushing everything into the whirlpool that they possibly can, taking it out of hot side, and are you instead also doing anything further up in the hot side process to add different kinds of layers of hop character, or are you pushing it all then to cold side?
So as far as hazy, and I know we only talked about the low ABV, and we can get into the bigger stuff because people want to hear that.
Yeah, let's do that too.
The lower ABV is just straight 3 pounds of T90. So usually that's Mosaic, Citra, Simcoe, or Nelson. Those are our whirlpool hops. So any beer that is, let's say, under 6% gets just straight 3 pounds of T90, and it's a cool pool. So we're cooling it down to 170. We do a 20-minute whirlpool and a 20-minute rest. That's all those beers get. Once we get above that 6% threshold, that's when we start adding in other YCH products like Dynaboost and Hyperboost. So let's say a beer is between 6 and 7. That beer will get the same 3 pounds of T90. And then, but before we do that, we'll send over 25 gallons or a barrel into the fermenter hot. This is a North Park trick. In fact, we still write...
The old Kelsey McNair method.
Do you see this note on this? You can read that out loud. NP style. I believe that was Evan at Green Cheek saying that he used that. And I was like, I'll just write that because then I'll know what it means. So, that beer happened to get 25 gallons of hot wort sent over to the tank beforehand. And we'll do Dynaboost. And I got ahead of myself there. So some of those beers, like 6 to 7%, we'll do that normal whirlpool. And when we send them over, with our yeast pitch, we'll add a certain amount of Hyperboost. So typically for us on a 5-barrel batch, we do everything in grams. That'll be 20 grams of whatever variety we want. So 3 pounds of T90 hops, 20 grams of Hyperboost with the yeast pitch. And we found that we use Hyperboost. We've used it all over, late in the process, early in the process. When we use it late, like with the dry hop or even after, we get this waxy characteristic, and the beers take about an extra 10 days to be what I would say is enjoyable, or where I want them to drink, for people to not be just being like, "Whew, okay, that's intense." Yeah. I want our beers to come off the canning line. For one, we don't have a lot of storage, so I want them to come off the canning line and right into the cooler. And adding that Hyperboost in with the yeast pitch lets it round out. The beers that are over 7% get that Dynaboost, and that's where we do the dip hop, send the hot wort over. We'll add anywhere from 200, 250 grams of Dynaboost directly into the tank with the hot wort. That'll sit there for the 40 minutes that the rest of the wort is whirlpooling. Those beers still get 3 pounds of T90. And then once we get to the next step bigger, let's say over 8.5% ABV, we'll start to add one bittering addition, but it's not actually hops. We use Flex from Haas. So we'll use 20 grams of Flex as a 10-minute addition, which gives us around 25 IBU kick, because it sits in there for the 40 minutes of whirlpool as well. And then we'll do that same Dynaboost addition. And then if we're making something really big, we'll switch out those 3 pounds of T90 for a cryo, just to get that little kick, a little more oil, a little less vegetal matter, but just to up. But basically what happens is the hop dam in our kettle is not great, and our heat X is sensitive to hop tube. So we don't want to clog it up and have to wait forever to knock out a beer. So that's kind of the strategy. And that was definitely a trial and error type of thing, where 3 pounds is just the sweet spot. And whether it's cryo or T90, that's it. So yeah, that's kind of the strategy when it comes to a whirlpool. And you did mention how people think whirlpool hops are this or that. We've tried 6-7 pounds in there, and on the back end we drink the beer and I'm like, I can't perceive a difference. And at the end of the day, I'd rather save the hops for the dry hop, where we're getting all the aromatic qualities and I can control that, than on the front end. And we're noticing no lack of hop saturation. Most of it's made up from the oils anyways, which we're adding via Hyperboost and those products. So that's kind of our strategy, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about fermentation. And of course, then I want to also get back to this subject we teased at the top about how you then select or track some of these hops from year to year. But let's talk about fermentation so we can just get that out of the way.
Yeah, so 90% of our hazies are fermented with Lumen Verdant. So all dry yeast.
Really, why?
So what we found, we tried yeast from all the London strains you can think of, fresh pitches and all that, and the characteristics we got from the Verdant just seemed to check all the boxes for us as far as what we were looking for. The other thing is, it started off as price. Not working at a brewery before means you also don't necessarily know how to harvest yeast. You also don't know how to CIP properly or do all sorts of things, but that's a whole nother story. But one of the things was, we were just one-off pitching these liquid fresh pitches for $400 a pitch plus shipping and handling. And on a 5-barrel batch, that is not conducive to making money. So someone turned us, actually it was some friends out east, turned us on to Lumen Verdant. One of the things that we do is we buy a brick for $160, right? 500 gram brick. We then brew one of our small beers. So a beer under 5.5%, and we use a half a brick. So we break that into half. We pitch in 250 grams, and we're getting 4 generations out of each pitch. So we're getting 8 generations out of each brick. So we build that as we go. So the first beer is something under 5.5%. The next beer is something under 6.5%. The next beer is something under 8%. And the last pitch is a big beer. And it makes each yeast pitch around $20, which then it's not saving the brewery any money because I blow it all on hops.
Yeah.
But the idea is there that we're not just blowing all the money on yeast. And we found a yeast that's conducive to our style. We like the finishing gravity. And as those generations pass, there's not a big difference in the aroma or characteristics of flavor, but there is in the final gravity. And that's very conducive to having a 3.2 beer finish at, say, 3.5 Plato, and then having the beer on the 4th gen, say an 8.5% beer, finish closer to 5.5 Plato. So it just builds its way up. You get stronger pitches. We do use zinc. With the first pitch, we use 65 grams of zinc from White Labs with every pitch, no oxygen, just straight dry yeast. every pitch thereafter, we're using, we do a 10 minute, 3 liters per minute oxygen hit on the tank. We use 65 grams of zinc and no nutrient, and that seems to be working out for us. And that's pretty much how we do. We do experiment with other yeasts. One of the beers you're drinking right now was with a BSI strain. This is a collab beer, and we'll mess around with other stuff because we're always experimenting. But that Verdant, Lumen Verdant, is kind of our go-to house hazy yeast.
Sure. And it has some real benefits.
Yeah, and one other note, we're pitching all those at 69 degrees. We're leaving it under 70 for 24 hours, and then we're letting it free rise up into the low 70s. We'll say 72 to 74, depending on the beer. One quick note, we have a beer that turns out to be a fan favorite. It's called Green Mask. It's a 8.5% hazy. And an interesting story with that is it's always the last pitch because we had a power outage the first time we ever made the beer. I come in the morning. I got a notification overnight that our internet was off. Security cameras were off about 2 a.m. We had just pitched yeast, at 4 o'clock that afternoon. I thought, this is bad. So I come in, that yeast is absolutely ripping through that beer. The tank is physically warm to the touch because the chiller's off, because no power. That tank was at 79 degrees within 14 hours of pitching. And I think, all right, well, we just wrecked a beer that's a pretty big beer, but it's not dry hopped yet, so not the end of the world. So I take a sample. I think, this isn't bad. It actually tastes oddly good. Email a few people in the brewing world to see, what should I be looking for? We just keep letting the beer ferment out, and it is so fruity and so good that Green Mask it's an all New Zealand hopped double hazy. And now we just brewed it right now. Every time we brew that beer, we just turn the jackets off after a day of fermentation, and that yeast goes down the drain at the end of the deal. But we just let it get up to like 78 degrees every time. So it was a happy accident, but it's definitely a profile for that specific beer.
But that Verdant can even crush it even at really high temperatures too.
Oh yeah. It was going strong, and we just brewed the beer last week. It's done fermenting, but that's the only beer we do that with. Everything else gets capped at around 73 degrees. Interesting.
Let's talk about hops a little bit. So we talked to you talked to the top about how you're a small brewery, 500 barrels. Like you're not doing, you are using a shit ton of hops. And so like you are still using quite a large volume given the scale of beer that's produced here because of what you're focused on. But that's not generally an amount that's going to give you like high priority in terms of selection. You knew making a hazy IPA, focusing on hazy IPA and having an aspiration to make some of the best hazy IPA you possibly could make, that getting the best quality hops was of incredibly high importance for you. And so figuring out how to do that as a small brewery was an interesting challenge, but you've tried to harness data, your own sensory data, your own reactions, responses, keeping track of that against some of the chemical data from some of these lots. Talk to us about how you track those things together to try to profile for yourself what exactly you're looking for in terms of a balance of oils, of total oil content, and of general intensity of hops in the specific kinds of high point components that you're looking for.
Yeah, so early on, we were buying everything on spot. Small brewery, just opened, no contracts. I didn't even know what a contract was. We're just buying everything on spot. And, you think, I'm going to order a box of Citra, and you brew some beers. You think, all right, it's pretty good. Then you order another box of Citra, and you think, what happened? I'm racking my brain. I did the exact same process, but this beer is not the beer that I brewed 2 months ago. And the more you start looking into it, you realize that there are these huge differences. Not all Citra is just Citra. There's so many differences within each variety, whether that's, it's an agricultural product. So from lot to lot, year to year, you get something that's totally different. And it wasn't until I had some friends let me use some hops from some of the bigger breweries that get a very preferential selection, and got to see what the big boys use for Citra, and thought, all right, this is different.
You got a taste of the good stuff, and then you got hooked to that.
Yep. And then all you got to do is figure out how to get it. So we had a few meetings with folks from YCH. They actually came to visit, and it was great. Just happened to be in town, and I had some questions. It's like, hey, we got this bag of Citra, and I don't love it, but how do we get something that's more consistent? It wasn't even good or bad. It was just consistency. And they were telling us, well, for one, if you contract out your hops, you can get these allocations that are lot specific. You can figure out exactly what you want, the profiles you want. And we have these tools online where you can see what our sensory team has filled out these spider charts as far as this one's mostly tropical or this one's more woody or whatever thing you're looking for. That opened the door for, more investigation. And with anything I do, brewing was a hobby, golf's a hobby. I take all these things and just run them into they're not hobbies anymore. And they're not even fun. I just take them, have to know everything and go full outs. And that's what happened with the hops. It's like, well, this is one of the main ingredients of this beer and what's making it what it is. So how do I get the best of the best? And, YCH was super helpful. Also, the people at Freestyle and just getting us some great Rawaka, Nelson, and those hops that we use a lot. But then it was kind of the why. Okay, we're getting this hop that they say is 100 on the tropical scale, but what is even making it be tropical? And that's where the chemistry comes in. So it was learning a lot about all the different survivable compounds. And for us that we're using so little on the hot side, survivable wasn't necessarily what I was worried about. It was more just the chemistry in general. So, you get you look up the lookup tool and you look up hops in general, and there's all these chemical names and all the science that's involved. And it's breaking down, all right, what part of this is actually important or do I need to look for? So there was tons of research talking to other brewers, talking to people within the hop world, a lot of time on the internet, reading books, and all that stuff, even talking to people since then outside of the beer world who are in perfumes and food flavoring, who deal with terpenes and other type of things, and being like, what is actually important to get these flavors? Because if you have a tropical smelling perfume, it's not like they squeezed a mango into the jar. It's made through chemistry. So how do you get there? So it was breaking down what was important to me, and that's high amounts of linalool, methylgeranate, geraniol, and 3-MH, which is a thiol driving compound within the hops. And that's something we'll use more in the whirlpool, interacts with the yeast and so on. So it was kind of looking for these three compounds in general. Linalool is my favorite, methylgeranate, and geraniol. So just finding hops that were high in those as far as a ppm standpoint. But then from there, it was figuring out how those...
There's a ppm standpoint rather than...
Yeah. So with YCH and a lot of hop companies, everything is tested and then they come back with ppm, which parts per million. So you're looking for grams per kilogram. And then you're also trying to figure out what the threshold is. So what's the minimum I need to put in this beer? And for anybody who's heavily dry hopped a beer, you open the tank afterwards and it looks like a large chunk of the hops never even got touched by the liquid. So then you're thinking, how soluble is this and what even got hit? So how much of this do I need to make a difference? And what also blew off in the process, how volatile are these compounds? So you have some of the bad compounds like myrcene, so volatile, it's not even worth looking at because most of it leaves the tank. So again, it came back to those three.
Which is the danger of looking at total oil versus looking at these concentrations of specific oils in that process.
It's exactly. So it's the danger of looking at two things. One, only total oil, and also only sensory. Because someone could put a spider graph of sensory in front of you and it says, this beer is 0 earthy, grassy, or vegetal, and it's 100 tropical, citrus, and berry. And you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a fruit bomb. But then the total oil is 1.0. And it's like, all right, well, there's not actually, the hop, when you rub it, might smell like those things, but there's not much of that in there to make it into the beer. And then you look at the science side and you see that the linalool is like 50 ppm, which is really low. So there's hardly even enough to break the threshold once you get into solubility that even though that hop smells great in between your palms, it doesn't actually make it into the beer because there's not enough oil, or you would need to use so much, you would end up with like 2 gallons of beer because you would soak up all the rest. On the same side as to what you alluded to with total oil, some of the oil content is just bad stuff, that blows off or you don't want. And you could see a beer, T90 hop that has 3.0 total oil, which is really high. But again, the compounds we're looking for, methylgeranate, linalool, and geraniol, are all, sub 100. And that beer is going to give you nothing but grass or nothing, or again, soak up a lot of beer. So it's being educated on what you're looking for, and then also how that drives the flavor you're looking for, and that combinations of sensory and chemistry, and then also what profile you're looking for as a brewery. So, like for instance, for this year, we're a 5-barrel brewery, so we don't have a lot of hops, but we've split up our lot selection into multiple lots. So we have 10 boxes of Citra of this particular variety, 10 boxes of that, and 10 boxes of another, because Slice, our flagship IPA, might be more of a citrus-driven thing, where I want more of a tropical for some of our other brands, and then maybe I want to mess around and have something that's a little more funky on the woody herbal side for something else. And people think herbal and bad, but if you look at any Citra profile, herbal's pretty high in all of them. So it's just knowing what you're looking for and then knowing how to read the data to be able to select, because when you get a number of lots from YCH or any hop company, you're going to get that data and it's not being overwhelmed, and also not just looking at sensory. It's like, well, how much of this chemistry is affecting it? And the answer is it's a lot. And that leads us to selection as well. This was the first year we actually got to travel out for selection. And being that we literally buy the minimum amount of a certain T90 hop to even be invited, it puts you in pod selection. And again, shout out to YCH for being awesome, like just the best hosts, giving you all the information. But one thing about pod selection that was, you're trying to figure out why they're giving you the lots they're giving you. So when you're a small brewery like us, you're picking out Citra's our main hop. We buy the most of it by far, and we go out to YCH and we get to sit in front of 3 lots. So you're thinking 3, but there's way more than that because there's all these breweries. So you think, why did you pick these 3 for me? And for us, we've always been very, very fond.
There's millions and millions of pounds of it grown in North America.
In over 4 different states, so.
Right. And then across, not just YCH, obviously, Haas as well.
Yeah.
There's just this large.
Hollingberry and all these brokers and companies. And for us, it was, we tend to gravitate, and this just happened, towards Oregon grown Citra. And at our selection this year, there wasn't an Oregon-grown Citra. So then it made me start to question even more things, because that's what I like to do, drive myself nuts doing it, is, okay, you said you picked these lots out for me. The last 2 years we've had Oregon-grown Citra. Why isn't there Oregon-grown Citra? So, a little frustrating, but at the same time, you can't just be, all about that. You got to play the game. And I also get it. We buy 30 boxes of Citra. We're tiny. There's breweries within 7 hours of here who buy 3,000 boxes of Citra, if not more, or entire lots. I get it. But the only way you can kind of get the quality you want is by looking into it, and then studying the data and asking why does this happen, as far as why do these hops smell like this, or why do they affect the beer like this, even more importantly. So we kind of found out that we're almost a select off paper type of brewery, because there's something to be said for going and selecting hops. Like, it's a great experience and it's really fun. You get to be behind the scenes, see how everything goes, get the tours. I will do that every year we're invited, because it's just a great experience. But for us, being so small and having that pod experience, it's almost beneficial to look at the paper and be educated on what you're getting and what's in front of you on the back end. And I should also say we selected Mosaic Cryo and Citra Cryo. Both of the lots we selected at pod selection were ones that we're using. So, it's not just a total.
It did work too.
It did work. Yeah. It's just, I feel like being as educated as possible is the best answer, especially if hoppy beer is your main thing, because hops are the ingredient that's driving the aroma and flavor. And it's just so important to me. Plus, I want to know why these things were happening as far as the interaction within the beer.
But you as a customer then, giving your rep this kind of information, I am looking for Citra that has, threshold of minimum of this, and this, and, sensory that's going to map to this. Like, what do you have? And even if you don't have enough to fulfill my entire order with this, or there's some remnants of this, of something that's going to fit this, that you can, send my way. And like that, you're an educated consumer at that point, buying hops, but giving them the information that you need for them, to work, to give you the best possible thing, given what that is.
Yeah, totally. And even things that are not measurable, like I said, we tend to trend towards Oregon grown Citra, whether that's the terroir of the Oregon. We use, like the last year we used all Westwood. This year we're a mixture of Westwood and Lakeside. We've gotten a bunch of Coleman hops. So there's 3 farms that are all a stone's throw from each other. And I don't know why we keep picking those. Obviously the chemistry says one thing, the sensory says one thing, but also they all happen to be from the same geographical area. So there's something to that as well. And for us, it's been a relationship with the farm too. When we were out at Hop Selection, we met Max from Coleman, we met Ryan from Westwood, we've since met the folks from Lakeside. So it's kind of sending them beer, showing them what we make, letting them see the flavor profile we're looking for. Also, sending people beer in the mail doesn't hurt any relationship. So just having that. And then also kind of knowing like, okay, for some reason there's a trend here. I get the chemistry, I get the sensory. I don't understand the terroir, and I don't know that anybody can, but there's a theme. So it's just kind of knowing where your hops come from. And that could be the same with New Zealand. It's like we tend to like certain Rawakas over others. I don't exactly know why. I've never been to New Zealand, but there's just a theme. So it's kind of studying that and finding those trends.
Fascinating. I'll have to ask you about your Rawaka preferences after we wrap this up. But we need to bring this one to a close. And, in terms of big picture, you've been doing Lumen, for the last, post-pandemic time. It's a harder time, compared to the 20 teens and to get a brewery off of the ground. What do you hope for in the near term and the long term future for Lumen? This is a creative project. You're a creative person, but it's also a technical project, and you love getting into the details of that. You've kept it small at this point in order to fill both sides of what this audience potentially is for Hazy IPA, both a nerdy trader side as well as the kinds of people that are going to come and saddle up and drink 1 or 2 or 3 after work on a Thursday. And so what does the future look like for Lumen? What do you hope to achieve in the next 3 years, 5 years?
I mean, from the actual like Omaha brewery standpoint, we have such a great customer base from a hospitality side. As you're going to see here shortly, at 3:00, we have the same people walk in every day for a happy hour. We have the same people walk in before we close. It's just keeping and growing that customer base and those relationships, because I know so many customers' names and they know me. My kids have I have a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. They're literally growing up in the brewery. So there's those relationships. So it's really fun. Same with our staff. We have a tight-knit staff that doesn't change often. So it's just kind of keeping that sense of community within the building. And then on the beer side, it's just to keep experimenting and growing what's possible within the styles we brew. Again, whether it's the lager or stouts, but mostly West Coast and Hazy IPA. So those are kind of what my barometer for, people will come in and say, give me your American Pilsner because I'm going to judge the brewery by this. And I think that's my favorite brew day because there's the least amount of hops involved. But at the same time, I go to a brewery, I'm like, what do you got that's hazy? Because that's how I'm judging the brewery is let's see how you made a hazy. And everybody's, they get it misguided and they think you just throw a bunch of hops in there and yada, yada, yada. And obviously we all know that's not true. It's a funny notion, but there's a lot more to it than that. So I think for us, as far as growth going forward, it's pushing those boundaries, using all these products that are always coming out, figuring how to use them. And then I know we talked about it earlier, but from the standpoint of both competition and hype, you have that whole thing. It's brewing beers for everybody, whether it's for a GABF judge or the dude who's buying a flat to send it to New Jersey tomorrow. It's just brewing beers for different people, but within that category that I love to drink as well.
And you can serve all of those people if you dial in beers and understand what they're looking for. And you can serve yourself in that side because all of these are interesting creative challenges they call on some different kind of elements in there. Yeah. Well, I think that is a great place to bring this to a close. G&D's new Elite 290 Micro Series runs on a natural refrigerant with near zero global warming potential. Berkeley Yeast's Dry Tropics London offers their best-selling liquid yeast strain with the ease of use of dry yeast. PacTex handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable. The multi-layered wonders of Indie Hop Strata are now easier than ever for brewers to tap into with Strata Cryo. The Midea 50/50 Flex can convert to all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Old Orchard is your one-stop shop for fruit juice concentrates, purees, and blends. The SS Brew Pump from SS Brewtech is engineered to tackle even the messiest brew days. And get your tickets now to the Craft Beer and Brewing Brewers Retreat. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber like Dan here. Build your own stack of magazines that sit back there on the desk next to you in the back of the brew house. And, of course, reference all of this stuff because we are here to bring you great information about brewing. Issue after issue, episode after episode, video class after video class, and all of that. If you're going to CBC, go to cbblive.beerandbrewing.com. We're going to do a live version of the podcast there, and we've got some tickets out there. And if you're an all-access subscriber, we'll kick you a free ticket as well. Dan, if people want to learn more about Lumen and the beer that you make here in Omaha, where can they find you both in real life and in the digital space?
In real life, we're in Little Bohemian neighborhood at Omaha, down at 1433 South 13th Street, just south of downtown Omaha. And online, pretty much just on Instagram. Just hit up the search and hit up Lumen Beer. You'll find us. I don't know our exact handle, Lumen Beer Co. maybe, but you'll find it. Those would be the two places I'd look, and that's pretty much it.
Crank up that Connor Oberst, that Bright Eyes, that Desapetarcidos. Come rock out here in Omaha. There's a fun, creative class and a awesome kind of community of brewers that are all working together and all pushing and challenging each other, and while also supporting each other to make awesome world-class beer and award-winning beer over and over and over again. Anyway, it's been great to talk to you about this. Cheers, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.